You know what's amusing about history? I said, my fingers drumming a quiet rhythm on the crystalline surface of my command console. It has an irritating way of repeating itself when you least expect it. Just when you're sure a species is gone for good, they resurface, usually with a vengeance. Across from me, my aide Krill blinked his 3 massive eyes in rapid succession, his posture tightening with unease. Commander Zorn, he asked cautiously, are you being what humans call sarcastic again? I gave a thin smile. No, Krill, I'm deadly serious, with a side serving of impending disaster. The command center of the Galactic Union's 7th Fleet headquarters was alive with tension. Holographic displays projected data from 17 separate outposts, all repeating the same alarming pattern. After 3 centuries of complete silence, human ships had reappeared on the edges of 7 different star systems. And not just any ships, warships. 300 years, I murmured, half to myself. 300 years without a whisper. And now they're back, flying vessels that make our most advanced destroyers look like children's toys. The door slid open with a hiss, and High Council Representative Madame Vox swept into the room with her usual theatrical flourish. Her silver-hued skin caught the blue light, gleaming like liquid metal, and her voice resonated with an authority that made my auditory canals throb. Commander Zorn, she said sharply, these reports, are they verified? I gave a grim nod. Triple verified, Madame Vox. 17 outposts, 7 systems, all reporting the same thing. Human warships of unknown configuration. If these readings are accurate, and I believe they are, their technology has advanced far beyond anything we've seen, in ways that seem to defy the known laws of physics. Her expression darkened. So, they've been busy during their absence. That's putting it mildly, I replied, activating a holographic display. They appear to be using a form of gravity manipulation we've never encountered before. Maneuvers that should tear any vessel apart. And their energy signatures. I hesitated. They're literally off our charts. We had to recalibrate our sensors just to track them. Krill shifted nervously, smoothing his uniform. But Commander, why now? Why return after so long? I laughed, though there was no humor in the sound. Why does anyone come back after vanishing? Either they've found something worth sharing, or they've come to settle a score. Given humanity's history with the Galactic Union, I let the sentence hang. My money is on the latter. The room fell silent. Everyone knew the history. 3 centuries ago, the Union had made what many now called its greatest blunder. Humanity, then a relative newcomer to interstellar society, had advanced with alarming speed, developing technologies that unsettled the elder races. When humans refused to halt their research into artificial intelligence and quantum manipulation, the Union Council voted to quarantine Earth and its colonies. It was meant to last 50 years, at most, but bureaucracy, politics, and eventual apathy stretched it into an indefinite exile. Communications from Earth dwindled. Monitoring stations reported less and less activity. Eventually, the Union assumed humanity had either destroyed itself or regressed into a pre-spacefaring civilization. Clearly, we had assumed wrong. I need someone who understands humans, Vox declared suddenly. Someone who studied them before the quarantine. I sighed. That won't be easy. Most of the experts on human culture died centuries ago. But there's one possibility. Professor Turk Lumen, I said, practically ancient now, but he spent decades studying human psychology and culture before the quarantine. Last I heard, he was living as a hermit on Proxima Station. Vox's lip curled. The eccentric who claimed humans were the most misunderstood species in the galaxy, the one who protested the quarantine until he was forcibly retired. The very same, I confirmed, but he's our best chance at understanding what we're facing. If anyone can tell us why they've returned and what they want, it's him. Vox hesitated, then gave a curt nod. Make it happen, and Commander, keep this contained. The last thing we need is a panic. After she left, Krill turned to me, his concern obvious. Commander, do you think we're in danger? I stared at the pulsating dots on the display representing a human ship that should not exist. Krill, if I've learned anything in centuries of service, it's this. The deadliest predator isn't the one that roars and bares its teeth. It's the one that watches in silence, learning your weaknesses before it strikes. And humans, my voice dropped to a whisper, humans have always been watchers. And now, after 300 years of silence, they've decided it's time to make noise. Proxima Station hung in the void like a tarnished jeweler, faded relic of its once thriving past. Once a bustling hub of commerce, it had decayed into a haven for those seeking obscurity. The perfect place for a disgraced academic to vanish. Our shuttle docked with a metallic clang that spoke volumes about the station's neglected maintenance. I adjusted my breathing apparatus to filter the oxygen-rich atmosphere and stepped through the airlock with Krill trailing nervously behind. The station's central promenade was a riot of species, smells, and sounds. Merchants hawked questionable wares from ramshackle stalls, while security personnel made a half-hearted attempt to maintain order. Charming, I muttered under my breath. Try not to touch anything, Krill, or anyone. Yes, Commander, he said tightly. The professor's quarters are in Section 47B. We pushed through the crowded corridors, drawing wary glances from the station's inhabitants. Union uniforms were rare here. Section 47B was a dilapidated residential wing where the lights flickered and the air recyclers wheezed like asthma. We reached the professor's door at the end of a narrow hallway. I pressed the communication panel. Nothing. I tried again, then resorted to the old-fashioned method. Knocking, go away, came a raspy voice from inside. Whatever you're selling, I'm not buying. If you're collecting debts, I've got nothing. If you're peddling religion, I'm already damned. Professor Lumen, I said, firmly. I'm Commander Zorn of the Galactic Union's 7th Fleet. We need to speak with you. It's a matter of galactic security. Silence, then a low, cackling laugh. The Union, after all these years, isn't that just perfect? What catastrophe finally made you remember old Turk Lumen? Professor, please, I said. It's urgent. More silence. Then the sound of multiple locks disengaging. The door slid open with a reluctant groan. Professor Turk Lumen stood before USA Relic, even by the long-lived standards of his species. His once vibrant blue skin had faded to a ghostly grey tufts of white hair sprouting haphazardly from his elongated skull. 6 spindly arms clutched an assortment of items. A book, a drinking vessel, an electronic device, and what appeared to be a stuffed toy teddy bear. If memory served well, he croaked, peering at us with rheumy eyes. The mighty Union on my doorstep. Come in, mind the mess. I wasn't expecting the architects of our future doom to visit today. The professor's quarters were a chaotic museum of human culture. Books, artwork, clothing, and devices from Earth covered every surface. Holographic displays cycled through images of human cities, wild landscapes, and celebrations. In one corner stood a life-sized model of a human male in formal attire. Maintained your interest in human culture, I see, I said carefully, stepping over a pile of what looked like sports equipment. Interest? Lumen snorted. This isn't interest, Commander. It's preservation. Someone had to remember them as they truly weren't the caricatures your Union's propaganda painted. Krill, unable to hide his curiosity, drifted toward a glass display filled with small, colorful objects. What are these? He asked, his large eyes widening. Careful, Lumen snapped, moving with surprising agility for someone of his age. He positioned himself between Krill and the case. 6 arms spread like a living barrier. Those are priceless artifacts, human children's toys from the early 21st century. They called them action figures. I cleared my throat, cutting through the exchange. Professor, we're not here to admire your collection. We need your expertise. Humanity has returned. Lumen froze. All 6 arms fell to his sides as if his strings had been cut. For a heartbeat, it seemed he had forgotten how to breathe. Then slowly, a grin unfurled across his weathered face. I knew it, he whispered, voice growing stronger. I knew they wouldn't just vanish into the void. The Union thought it had contained them, or destroyed them. Fools. I told them all humans are nothing if not survivors. That's precisely why we're here, I said firmly. We need to understand what they want, what their intentions might be. Lumen shuffled to a desk buried under books, devices, and papers. He picked up an ancient pair of spectacles, a relic from Earth's past, worn more for effect than necessity. What they want, he echoed. After 3 centuries of forced isolation, that should be obvious, Commander. They want what anyone would want after being unjustly imprisoned. Justice, or revenge, possibly both. I exchanged a glance with Krill. The situation is complicated, Professor. Their ships are far beyond anything in our arsenal. If they wanted revenge, they could have attacked already. Lumen's eyes gleamed. So they're showing restraint. How very interesting. He began to pace, all 6 arms gesturing as his thoughts accelerated. You see, that's what the Union never understood about humans. They are not the impulsive, savage creatures of your propaganda. Yes, they can be violent, their history proves that, but they're also capable of patience, of forgiveness, of extraordinary creativity. He paused before a human mannequin dressed in formal attire, adjusting its tie with a reverence that was almost tender. Did you know humans had a saying, living well is the best revenge? Perhaps that's exactly what they've done. 3 centuries of advancement, 3 centuries of building, creating, thriving, while the Union stagnated beneath its own bureaucracy. That's not helpful, I said sharply. We need practical insights. They've appeared in 7 systems simultaneously, with technology that shouldn't exist. What are they planning? Lumen turned to me, suddenly grave. Have they made any demands? Any communication at all? Nothing. They're watching. He tapped his chin, thoughtful. Classic human psychological tactic. Creating tension through silence. They're making you sweat, Commander. Krill's voice wavered. But what do they want? Lumen shrugged. To know that, you must first understand what was taken from them. The quarantine didn't just trap them physically, it severed them from the destiny they believed was theirs. Humans have an unusual relationship with purpose. Their literature is steeped in it. He gestured to the shelves lined with human books. They believed they had a special role to play in the galaxy, not out of arrogance, but from a deep-seated need to contribute, to matter. The Union told them they didn't matter, that they were dangerous, that they must be contained. A chill crept up my spine despite the stuffiness of the room. And now they're back to prove us wrong, or to prove themselves right, Lumen corrected softly. I tried to rein in my frustration. With all due respect, Professor Philosophy won't help us prepare for a potential conflict. If their technology is as advanced as it appears, the entire Union could be at risk. Lumen laughed, a harsh, wheezing sound that dissolved into a cough. Oh, Commander, if they wanted conflict, you'd already be dead. No, they're after something else. What, then? Recognition, perhaps, acknowledgement, or maybe they've simply outgrown us, and are stopping by to say goodbye before moving on to greater things. Who can say? The only way to know is to ask them. Krill's eyes went wide. Ask them, you mean? Make contact. Of course, Lumen said, incredulous. Why else would you come here, if not for advice on how to communicate with them? I hesitated. The Union's protocol for unknown threats was clear. Maintain distance, observe, report to High Command. Direct contact was far down the list of approved responses, but nothing about this situation was following protocol. Even if we wanted to, I said carefully, we don't know how. They're not responding to any standard hailing frequencies. Lumen rolled all 4 of his eyes. Naturally not. Why would they use 300-year-old communication protocols? You'll need to get their attention another way. He shuffled to a storage unit, muttering to himself as he rummaged through its contents. After a moment, he emerged holding a small, unassuming metal cube, a human communication device, he explained, caressing it with all 6 hands. One of their early quantum entanglement prototypes. It shouldn't even work after all this time, but human engineering has a way of surprising you. I took the cube skeptically. And you believe they'll still be monitoring this frequency after 3 centuries? Not the frequency, Lumen corrected, the signature. Every human quantum device has a unique quantum signature. It's how they authenticated transmissions. If they're out there watching, they'll recognize this. Humans are sentimental creatures. They'd notice. I turned the cube over in my hands. It felt impossibly primitive compared to our technology. And what do we say, if they respond? Lumen's expression softened. The truth, Commander. That's another thing about humans. They have an uncanny ability to sense lies. Tell them who you are, why you're reaching out, then listen. Really listen. As we prepared to leave, Lumen's bony hand gripped my arm with surprising strength. One more thing, Commander. When you speak with them, remember this. Humans never forgot. They rarely forgave, but they always surprised you. Back aboard my ship, the cube sat on my desk like a silent challenge. Krill had run every diagnostic imaginable. It was indeed an authentic early human quantum communication device. Primitive by our standards, revolutionary in its time. The High Council is demanding updates, Krill said nervously from the doorway. Madame Vox has called 3 times in the last hour. Let her wait, I muttered, eyes fixed on the cube. We need to think this through. I picked it up, feeling its weight. Using it would be a gamble. But then again, everything about this moment was a gamble. Directly violating at least 7 Union protocols was not how I envisioned my day. Opening an unsanctioned channel to a potentially hostile force could end my career and, if the humans reacted poorly, much more than that. But with 17 outposts now reporting human vessels sailing motionless, and ignoring standard hails and action was becoming a bigger risk than disobedience. The longer we waited, the more whispers of a preemptive strike spread through the Union. A foolish idea, given the sensor readings of their technology. Krill, I ordered quietly. Secure the communication room. No recordings, no logs, just you and me. His eyes widened in disbelief. Commander, that's against. I know exactly what it's against. Do it anyway. 10 minutes later, we stood in the small, sealed chamber. I placed the ancient cube on the console. How does it work? Krill whispered, as if the humans might already be listening. According to the professor's notes, we activate it and speak. The quantum entanglement should do the rest. Should. It's 300 years old, Krill. We're lucky if it does anything at all. I pressed my thumb against the activation panel. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then the cube glowed softly blue, its surface blooming with unfamiliar symbols, human writing I couldn't decipher. Is it working? Krill asked. I have no idea. I leaned closer to the device. This is Commander Zorn of the Galactic Union's 7th Fleet. I am attempting to establish communication with human vessels. Please respond. Silence. To any human vessel receiving this transmission. I tried again. We acknowledge your presence and wish to open dialogue. Please respond. The cube brightened slightly but gave no reply. Perhaps it's broken after all, Krill muttered. Perhaps, I sighed. Or perhaps they're simply not. The cube erupted in brilliant light, forcing us to step back. A holographic image formed above it, not the crude, flickering projections of Union tech, but a seamless three-dimensional window. A human woman stood before us in an unfamiliar military uniform, dark skin, close-cropped hair, a neutral expression and eyes that seemed to look straight through me. This is Admiral Tanya Parker of the Earth Alliance vessel Redemption, she said. Her voice was clear and steady, despite the centuries-old device bridging us. We've been wondering when someone would think to try the old quantum net, though I must say, we expected someone of higher rank than a fleet commander. I forced myself to remain composed. Admiral Parker, thank you for responding. We've been attempting to reach you through standard channels. She gave a faint smile. Your standard channels are quaint, Commander, like using smoke signals in the age of neural networks. I must ask, what is the purpose of your return to Union space? Her brow lifted slightly. Union space. Interesting perspective. We consider these contested regions at best. Krill shifted nervously behind me. I shot him a warning glance and continued. Admiral, your vessels have caused considerable alarm. Your technology appears significantly advanced. We seek peaceful dialogue, but we must understand your intentions. She studied me for a long, uncomfortable moment. Our intentions? That's not a simple question, Commander Zorn. One better discussed in person rather than over this charming antique. In person, I echoed, startled. Yes, we propose a meeting, one representative from your union, one from ours. Neutral location, I'd need to consult with the High Council. Of course, she nodded once. You have 12 hours to decide. If we don't receive a response by then, we'll assume the Union isn't interested in dialogue. I couldn't stop myself. And if the Union declines? Her expression remained calm, but something flickered in her eyes, something primal that made my spine tighten. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Commander. For all our sakes, the image flickered. Transmission coordinates for your response are embedded in this signal. 12 hours. The projection dissolved, leaving the cube inert on the console. Krill's voice was a shaky whisper. What do we do now? I drew a deep breath, trying to steady my racing hearts. Now, Krill, we do something truly terrifying. What's that? We tell the High Council the truth. As we left the chamber, I couldn't shake the feeling we'd just struck a match in a room full of fuel. Humanity had been silent for 3 centuries. Now they were back wielding technology we couldn't comprehend, and an admiral who spoke of contested regions, with eyes that promised consequences beyond imagination. Whatever came next would change the galaxy forever, and given our history with humanity, I doubted their return would be peaceful. We had locked them away and forgotten them for 300 years. But if there's one thing every species in the galaxy knows about humans, it's this: they never forget a slight. The High Council chamber had never felt so suffocating. 12 representatives from the most powerful species in the Union sat in a perfect circle, their tiered seats looming like judges. I stood at the center like a criminal awaiting sentencing, with Madame Vox beside me, a silent executioner ready to deliver the blow. Councillor Drax's reptilian features were rigid with barely contained tension. Let me ensure I understand correctly, Commander Zorn. The council chamber felt more oppressive than ever, its domed ceiling heavy with judgment. Councillor Drax's voice cut through the air like a blade measure. Furious and cold. Without authorization, he said, his scaled features taut with restraint. You initiated contact with an unidentified human force using unregistered technology. Technology provided by a disgraced academic, no less. I stood my ground. Yes, Councillor, I did. and this human Admiral Parker has requested a face-to-face meeting within. I glanced at the chronometer on the wall. 9 hours and 17 minutes requested. Drax's clawed hand slammed down on his console, the sound echoing through the chamber. Do not play word games with me, Commander. This is a breach of 17 security protocols. Before I could respond, Madame Vox spoke smoothly, her tone calm but laced with venom. With respect, Counselor, perhaps we should focus on the situation rather than the list of violations. The protocols can be addressed later. The way she said later told me she was already drafting my indictment. From the upper tier, Counselor Mira leaned forward. Her translucent skin shimmered faintly, bioluminescent veins pulsing in slow rhythm, a sign of deep contemplation among her kind. Commander Zorn, she said softly, in your assessment, what are the human intentions? I weighed every word carefully. Unclear, Counselor. Admiral Parker referred to these as contested regions, suggesting a potential territorial dispute. But if conquest were their goal, their technological superiority would have allowed them to strike already. Unless, interjected Counselor Pax, his eyes narrowing, this is psychological warfare, a show of power to force concessions without firing a shot. Possible, I admitted. But then why request a meeting at all? The chamber erupted into quiet murmurs, some calling for immediate military mobilization, others for appeasement. Both extremes sounded equally disastrous. Counselor Mira raised a delicate, glowing hand, silencing the room. The professor, you consulted Lumen. His theories on humans were unconventional. Did he share any insight into what they might want after all this time? I hesitated, recalling the old scholar's final words. He suggested they might be seeking recognition, maybe even closure. Drax scoffed, the sound wet and derisive. Closure. They were quarantined for the safety of the entire galaxy. Their reckless experiments nearly tore space itself apart. With respect, Counselor, I said, forcing my voice to remain calm. That was 3 centuries ago. The quarantine was meant to be temporary. A heavy silence fell. We all knew the truth. The quarantine had become convenient, a forgotten cage for a dangerous species. Earth and her colonies had simply faded from memory. Vox broke the silence. Regardless of past decisions, we must now determine our response. The window for action is short. Counselor Mira's bioluminescent markings fled brighter, betraying rising urgency. I believe we must accept the invitation. If we refuse, they may interpret silence as hostility, and from the reports, their technology could end this union in hours. Drax's gaze swept the room. And who, exactly, would represent us in this meeting? Who will stand before them? Every eye turned toward me. Oh no, I said, stepping back instinctively. I'm a fleet commander, not a diplomat. Surely someone else. You initiated contact, Vox interrupted smoothly, and somehow, you managed not to provoke them. That makes you the most qualified individual we have. It's decided, Mira announced. Commander Zorn will represent the Galactic Union. The Council will provide instructions as needed, but given the time constraints, you will act as our voice. And just like that, the weight of history settled on my shoulders. I had become the first Union representative to meet a human in 300 years. The fate of the galaxy might hinge on whether I could survive a conversation with a species famous for its brilliance, volatility and memory. Krill's voice broke the silence aboard our shuttle as we approached the rendezvous moon. This is a terrible idea. The barren gray sphere spun slowly beneath us, orbiting a vast gas giant that shimmered with storms the size of continents. Your optimism is noted, I said, checking my translator implant for the 4th time. Still functioning? Barely, Krill muttered. The language files are 3 centuries old. What if they take offense to something outdated? What if this is a trap? What if they capture you, and what if they just want to talk? I interrupted. His eyes blinked in rapid succession, his species' version of panic. Do you really believe that? I have to, I said quietly, because the alternative is far worse. Our sensors detected a small dome on the moon's surface, freshly constructed. Inside a table and 2 chairs, one human, one clearly designed for me. They did their research, Krill murmured. Atmosphere readings, I asked. Standard oxygen-nitrogen mix. Slightly high oxygen, but within safe limits. No toxins detected. At least they aren't trying to poison me outright, I said dryly. That's encouraging. Krill's voice trembled. Stay with the shuttle, I ordered. Engines hot. If I'm not back in 3 hours, return to headquarters and tell them. I hesitated. Tell them humanity never forgot. Krill nodded miserably. Good luck, Commander. The hatch opened to a desolate landscape, bathed in pale light from the distant gas giant. I crossed the rocky surface toward the dome. As I neared, A seamless section of the wall slid open, revealing an entrance that hadn't been visible moments earlier. Inside, Admiral Tonya Parker stood waiting. She was taller than I'd expected, her dark uniform pristine, its simplicity speaking of quiet authority. No visible weapons, but with their technology, that meant nothing. "Commander Zorn," she greeted, her tone composed, her presence commanding. "Admiral Parker," I replied, inclining my head. "The Galactic Union appreciates this opportunity for dialogue." Her lips curved in a faint smile. "Diplomatic, good, please, sit." As I took my seat, the chair shifted shape beneath me, adapting seamlessly to my physiology. It was unsettlingly comfortable. "I've disabled all recording devices in this structure," Parker said, sitting opposite me. "Nothing said here will be transmitted or logged. This conversation is between you and me." "I appreciate the privacy," I said cautiously, "though I'm still required to report back to my council." "As am I," she replied. "But what we say to our superiors and what we mean need not be identical." I studied her carefully. "You're proposing something unofficial." Parker leaned forward slightly, her eyes never leaving mine. "Let's skip the formalities, Commander. We both know why we're here. Humanity was imprisoned for 3 centuries. Now we've returned with technology that frightens you. You're wondering if we want revenge." I met her gaze. "Do you?" A real smile flickered across her face. "No, though I'd be lying if I said the thought hadn't crossed our minds." "Then what do you want?" I asked. "Context," she said simply. I tried to make sense of her words. "Understanding," I echoed. "Understanding of what?" Admiral Parker's gaze held steady. "To fill in the gaps in our history, yours and ours." I blinked, confused. "I don't follow," she sighed, a sound heavy with memory. 300 years ago, the Galactic Union quarantined Earth and all its colonies. No ships were permitted to leave, no transmissions allowed to pass the border. We were sealed inside our own solar system, cut off completely. For safety reasons. I replied automatically, repeating the official justification I'd been taught since childhood. "So you were told," she said bitterly. "So we were told, but that temporary measure stretched into centuries. No contact, no explanation, no end in sight." Several officers exchanged uneasy glances around the table. "The bureaucracy of the Union can be inefficient," I offered weakly. "Inefficient." Parker laughed, a sharp, humorless sound that echoed through the chamber. "That's what you call abandoning an entire species to isolation for 3 centuries. I hesitated. "What happened then? On Earth, how did you survive that?" Something shifted in her expression, pride, sorrow, and something deeper. "At first, chaos, panic, rage. We tried to break the quarantine by force, but every attempt failed. Then came the despair. Civil unrest tore nations apart. Resource wars nearly finished the job. But you didn't fall," I said quietly. "No," she agreed. "Because something happened that your union never imagined possible." She leaned forward slightly, eyes gleaming. "We united. For the first time in our history, humanity found a common enemy, the quarantine itself. It became our rallying cry. Break the chains." Every scientist, every engineer, every child born under the quarantine grew up with one purpose: to make that wall irrelevant. I thought of the readings from their ship's technology beyond anything in Union records, and you succeeded. Parker's lips curved in a faint, knowing smile. "Beyond anyone's expectations. When a civilization is left alone with nothing but determination and time, evolution accelerates. Quantum physics, gravity manipulation, interstellar travel that doesn't rely on spacefolding. We solved problems your scientists haven't even named yet. The implications were staggering. And now you've returned." "Yes," she said softly, "but not for vengeance, Commander. For answers." She leaned forward, her intensity palpable. "We were told we were quarantined because our AI and quantum experiments threatened galactic stability. But that was a lie. Other species conducted similar research. None were isolated. So tell me, what was the real reason?" I hesitated. The true answer was buried deep in restricted archives. But looking at her, at humanity reborn into something far greater than what the Union remembered, lying felt both foolish and dangerous. "Fear," I said finally. Parker's brows rose. "Fear of what?" "Of you," I admitted. "Of your potential, your speed, your ability to adapt and innovate. Most species evolve over millennia before they reach the stars. Humanity did it in 3 centuries. The elder races saw your pace and panicked. They decided to slow you down to give the rest of the galaxy time to catch up." Parker's tone flattened. "And then you forgot us." I nodded slowly. "Yes, the officials who enacted the quarantine died or retired. Political priorities shifted. Eventually, Earth became little more than a footnote in Union records. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, quietly, "And now that we've returned stronger, faster, more advanced, what will the Union do?" "I don't know," I said truthfully. "The High Council is divided. Some demand military action, despite the clear imbalance. Others push for negotiation, reparations, even formal apologies. And you, Commander?" she asked, her voice soft but unyielding. "What do you think?" Her question caught me off guard. "My opinion isn't relevant. I'm just the messenger." "I disagree," she said. "You are the first Union officer to speak with us in 300 years. Your words will matter." I chose my next words carefully. "I think the Union made a grave mistake, not out of cruelty, but fear. And how we respond now today will determine whether our civilization grows or collapses under its own arrogance." Parker regarded me thoughtfully, then reached into her uniform and placed a small data crystal on the table. Its facets shimmered faintly in the chamber light. "This contains records of what we achieved during our isolation," she said. "Scientific data, cultural archives, historical logs. Consider it a gesture of good faith." I stared at it in disbelief. "Why share this with us?" "Because despite everything," she said, "we never wanted separation. We wanted to contribute, to belong. That hasn't changed." I frowned. "And what do you want in return?" Her smile returned, calm, deliberate, dangerous. "Two things. First, a formal acknowledgement that the quarantine was unjustified, an admission, not an apology." "That may be possible," I said cautiously. "And the second, the right to establish an independent human territory," she replied, "free of Union control. We have no desire to rejoin a system that once caged us." "The Council will see that as a threat," I warned. "It isn't meant as one," Parker said firmly. "We have no interest in expansion beyond our old borders. We want autonomy, not dominance. And if the Union refuses—" Her gaze hardened, her voice dropping to a tone that chilled the air. "Then we will find our own way forward. We prefer peace, Commander, but never again will we allow ourselves to be imprisoned or controlled." The silence that followed was suffocating. The implied threat didn't need to be spoken. Humanity had returned not as the desperate exiles the Union once dismissed, but as equals, or perhaps something far greater. I had no doubt, based on what I'd seen of their ships, that humanity could enforce its demands by force if it wished. Every reading, every signal, every quiet pulse of their technology spoke of capability far beyond our understanding. "I will convey your position to the High Council," I said. Keeping my tone formal. Admiral Parker rose, signaling the end of our meeting. "One more thing, Commander. A personal request." "Yes, Admiral." "There's an Arcaturian academic, Professor Turk Lumen. During the first years of the quarantine, he sent countless transmissions protesting our treatment. The Union blocked them, of course, but we managed to intercept fragments. He was one of the few non-humans who spoke for us." That caught me off guard. "I know him," I said. "He was the one who provided the quantum communicator that allowed this contact to happen." Parker smiled faintly. "Of course he did. We'd like to invite him to visit Earth to see what we've become." "I'll make sure he receives your invitation," I replied. As I turned to leave, her voice stopped me. "Commander Zorn." I looked back. "Mystery rarely grants second chances," she said quietly. "For all our sakes, I hope your council recognizes this one." The High Council chamber erupted into chaos the moment I finished my report. Voices collided like thunder. Some shouted for war, others for restraint. Accusations, fear, and desperation filled the air. "This is blackmail," roared Councillor Drax, his scaled features flushed with rage. "They demand autonomy and territory under threat of what? Attack, conquest. We cannot negotiate with They offered us knowledge freely," Councillor Mira countered, her bioluminescence pulsing with agitation. "That indicates goodwill, not aggression." "Or a ploy," Vox interjected coldly. "A lure to lower our guard before they strike." I stood in silence at the chamber's center, the small data crystal Admiral Parker had given me still in my hand. Its weight felt heavier than any weapon. During the long flight back, I'd wondered what was stored within what 3 centuries of isolation had yielded, and what would happen if we rejected their terms. "Commander Zorn," Mira called above the din, her voice sharp enough to cut through the chaos. "You spoke with this human directly. What is your assessment?" The chamber fell silent. Every gaze turned to me. "I believe," I began slowly, but Admiral Parker was sincere. "Humanity feels wronged, rightfully so, but they are not seeking revenge. They want recognition and autonomy. And if we refuse," Drax demanded. I met his eyes steadily. "Then we face a war we cannot win." Their technology surpasses ours by centuries. The readings from their vessels confirm it. We wouldn't stand a chance. Vox hissed softly. We cannot simply surrender to their demands. It's not surrender, I said, my voice firm. It's accepting reality. We locked them away. We left them to die. And instead, they thrive. Now they offer peace and knowledge when they could just as easily have come with fleets. A long pause followed. Mira's luminescence settled into a calm, steady glow, a sign of resolution among her species. Then I propose we accept their terms, she said. Acknowledge the injustice of the quarantine and recognize humanity's sovereignty over their ancestral worlds. Seconded, another counselor said quickly. Drax slammed a clawed fist on the table. Capitulation without negotiation, without guarantees. What guarantees could we enforce? I asked quietly. You've seen the scans. Their ships could blot out our fleets before we even finished talking. His anger faltered. Reality was beginning to sink in. The balance of power had shifted and there was no going back. After hours of heated debate, the Council voted. By a narrow margin, the resolution passed. The Union would acknowledge the unjust quarantine, recognize human sovereignty, and open formal diplomatic relations. In exchange, humanity would share selected scientific data. When the chamber finally emptied, Madame Vox approached me. I expected a reprimand for my breach of protocol, but her expression was thoughtful. You handled this well, Commander, she said, surprising me. This could have collapsed into war within minutes. Thank you, Madame Vox. I only delivered a message. No, she said, shaking her head. You saw what the Council could not, that the galaxy has changed. Her gaze dropped to the data crystal in my hand. What do you think is on it? Knowledge, I said softly. Perhaps discoveries that could elevate us or destroy us. Vox nodded grimly. Humans were always dangerous dreamers. 3 centuries of isolation may have turned that dream into something even greater or more terrifying. She paused, her eyes distant. I wonder if, in 100 years, we'll even recognize the galaxy they're about to reshape. In a cluttered laboratory deep within the Arcaturian Academy, Professor Turk Lumen moved with uncharacteristic energy. 6 arms fluttered in disorganized motion as he packed for the journey ahead, muttering to himself about probabilities, ethics, and destiny. He was going to Earth, to the world the Union had once condemned to silence, to the species that refused to fade. And as I watched the transport logs update with his name, I realized the galaxy had just entered a new age, an age defined not by fear or dominance, but by the return of humanity. Professor Lumen's laughter echoed through the cluttered room as he packed with manic enthusiasm, tossing relics and datapads into an old travel case. I knew they'd survive, he said, eyes glinting with triumph. Thrive, even. The most adaptable species the galaxy has ever seen. And after all this time, they remembered me. I couldn't help but smile at his excitement. The invitation is quite an honor, Professor. You'll be the first non-human allowed to visit Earth in 3 centuries. Honor. He let out a sharp, delighted bark of laughter. It's vindication. They called me obsessed, deluded, said humanity was extinct, forgotten. And now look, I nodded. The formal treaty will be signed next month. Human representatives will attend at Union headquarters. There's even talk of establishing a permanent embassy. Lumen froze mid-motion, one clawed hand gripping a data crystal. And how does the Union feel about that? About humans returning to the galactic stage? Uneasy, I admitted. Their technology, their rate of advancement, it's humbling. As it should be, he replied firmly. The Union needs humbling, needs to remember what true diversity means, not of species, but of thought, of perspective. Humans understood that better than anyone. He picked up a small silver model from his desk, a replica of an ancient human spacecraft. Do you know what this is? I shook my head. Apollo 11, he said reverently. The vessel that first took them to their moon. Primitive by today's standards. Yet they built it with nothing but slide rules and paper calculations. No quantum cordis, no AO guidance, just human minds and sheer will. He placed the model back down, almost tenderly. That's what the Union feared, not their weapons or machines, but their spirit, their refusal to accept limits. And now, I said quietly, they're back. Lumen's eyes gleamed. Yes, and the galaxy will never be the same. 1 year later I stood at the massive observation window of Union headquarters, watching the first human diplomatic vessel approach. Unlike their formidable warships, this craft was sleek and graceful, built not to intimidate, but to inspire. Lieutenant Krill stood beside me, datapad in hand. They're integrating faster than anyone predicted. 23 trade agreements signed, 17 scientific collaborations. and their medical technology has revolutionized treatment for 14 species. Yet they remain independent, I noted. No move to rejoin the Union. Can you blame them? Krill asked. After what was done to them, I had no answer. Movement at the far end of the docking bay drew my attention. A human delegation had disembarked, led by a familiar figure, Admiral Parker. She caught my gaze and smiled, striding toward me with the confidence of a veteran commander. Commander Zorn, she greeted, extending her hand in the human fashion. Admiral Parker, welcome to Union headquarters. She glanced around at the gathered crowd, representatives from a dozen species, all watching humanity's return with awe and unease. It feels strange, she admitted. After centuries of silence, suddenly we're the center of attention. Your technological contributions have certainly drawn interest, I said. That's just the beginning, she replied, her tone measured. We've been selective with what we've shared so far. Trust must come first. I nodded. And Professor Lumen, how was his visit to Earth? Parker's expression softened. Transformative, for him and for us. He's something of a hero among humans now. The alien who never forgot us. He's leading a cultural exchange initiative. I'm glad, I said sincerely. He deserved that recognition. For a moment, we stood in companionable silence, watching engineers and envoys move about the dock. Then Parker turned to me, her voice thoughtful. Do you know what humanity feared most during our isolation, Commander? What? That we'd be forgotten, she said. That the galaxy would move on without us, never wondering what became of that strange, unpredictable species from the spiral arm. We did forget, I admitted quietly. To our shame, she nodded. Yes, but in forgetting us, you gave us something priceless. And what was that? Freedom, she said simply. To evolve without judgment. To become something new. The quarantine was cruel, yes, but it forced us to rely on ourselves. To grow in ways we never could have under the Union's watchful eye. A chime echoed across the bay, signaling the beginning of the diplomatic summit. Parker straightened her uniform, every inch the composed leader. Duty calls, she said. Then she added with a faint, knowing smile, a word of advice. Commander, watch what happens next. Humanity wasn't just silent for 300 years. We were listening, learning, planning. Her smile deepened, warm, but edged with quiet power. And now, we're ready to speak. As she walked away to rejoin her delegation, I felt a chill of realization. This wasn't just the return of an old ally, it was the dawn of a new galactic era. Humanity had come back, not with vengeance, but with something far greater: creativity, resolve, and the unbreakable certainty that they belonged among the stars. We had tried to forget them, tried to make them small. Instead, they had become something vast, and as I watched them enter the council chambers, heads held high, I understood the galaxy would never be the same again.